One final thing we're going to look at in this unit. We've talked about um, whether or not you can afford a home, how much of a home you can afford, and then we've talked about the various costs that go with initially purchasing a house, as well as living in the house and maintaining the house. So like property taxes and insurance costs, maintenance costs, and then all the initial costs of the actual purchasing of the home. So we're going to wrap up with what's better, renting or buying? What do you think, like right now, what do you think might be better, renting or buying? Why?
Because in the end, it's in return.
Exactly.
Like it's easier than maybe paying maybe $1,000 a year.
Oh, no,
It's way more than
that's an excellent explanation. In the short term, renting may look better, but in the long term, you're right. In renting, you're not putting your money into anything. In buying, at the end, you're going to eventually own something that you're going to be able to sell. And you're going to find, and we're going to find that over the long run, actually, even with the initial costs that you have to put into buying a home and the property taxes and the insurance and maintenance, over the long run, it actually costs you more to rent than it would to buy. And then you, like you said, you get the bonus of owning something. What's that? Exactly. Right? Whereas you can't do that to apartments. And the other thing, and this is something that is here, you know, like if you want to have I mean, I don't want to move into an apartment because I've got a house with a backyard that's perfect for my pet. Right? Because for me, I mean, if I had forever, whatever reason, I had to sell my house and then decide whether I wanted to rent or buy. Well, there are places that you can rent, I'm sure, that allow pets, but I don't think there's many.
Yeah, like we just rented and we can only have 2 pets, but we have 5, but at least something.
Yeah. So, I mean, so that's definitely a restriction. The fact that you don't have a yard is a disadvantage to some people, but maybe an advantage to others.
You can have a yard. When we rented
For an
out the yard-
apartment? Oh, you're talking about if you rent a house. Yeah, no, if you rent a house, yeah, you could definitely, I mean, if whoever's renting it to you would allow pets and you've got a yard, yes. I mean, that could be a compromise, right? So other things when you're considering renting, so what you want to look at is how much the rental payments are, and how often. Usually it's by month. Usually you're going to have to pay some in advance when you first rent a place. What's included, like the utilities, usually heat, hydro, and water are included in rent, whereas you have to pay those if you have a house. Some other like things like a cell phone and things like TV, you're going to have to pay for both, whether you rent or buy. Okay. Insurance, you don't necessarily have to get insurance when you rent a place, but if something happens, you could end up losing or paying big time. Okay. And I mean, if you rent, chances are you're going to be paying less in the short term. So what do you want to do with that extra money that you would have spent if you would have bought a house? Maybe you want to invest it. And maybe you want to invest it and save for five years or something like that, looking down the road to say, okay, I'm going to rent for the time being. I'm going to put the money I would have saved for a down payment on the house, I'm going to put it into an investment so that 5 years down the road, I can put a bigger down payment towards a house. However, the problem with that is what happens to the housing market? Does it go up? Right? So, I mean, there's all sorts of factors happen. But let's just look at one example. We're going to look sort of at 2 main examples. of renting versus buying. And I'm gonna talk about the first one today and the next one next class, because it's pretty big. All right, so you have the opportunity to purchase a home valued at $195,000 with a down payment of $25,000, or you can rent a similar home for $975 a month. If you decide to rent the house, so you're going to rent a house, not an apartment, how much will you have spent on housing after 1 year? How do we find that? 975 times 12. Which is going to give us $11,700. What happens in the long run? Let's say you're going to be in this place for like 20 years. Well, if you're going to be in a place, renting a place for a long time, right, chances are the rental charge is going to increase every year. And you can see here that this is what it does. So this table shows how the rent is increasing every year. So you start year one, you pay $975 every month. Second year, it goes up by 2%. So if you did $975 times 1.02, you would get $994.50. And then if you times 1.02, you get the next one. And times 1.02, you get the next one. So if we want to figure out year 20 here, we would take the previous year. Now there's two ways you can calculate the percentage increase. You can do the previous year plus the previous year times 2%, which would be 0.02. You could do it like that. But a quicker way, when something increases by a certain percent, and you should try and get used to doing it this way, instead of doing multiple calculations, all you have to do is times 1.02. These two are going to give you the same answer. And that answer is going to be $1,420.39. So that's what you get when you do either of those calculations. To fill in the next column, the cost of the rent that year, well, if we're paying year 20, 14, 20, 39 a month, to figure out how much I pay for the year, I just do 14, 20, 39 times 12 to figure out how much I pay in the year. And that's going to work out to $17,044.68. And then the last column is your running total. How much does it cost you in rent for the entire 20 years? Remember, this is just per month in the 20th year. This is the total amount in the 20th year only. Now I want to find out how much have I paid over the entire 20 years. Well, here, to get this, I would have to take the previous amount. So for 19 years, I paid a total of $267,234.54. In the 20th year, I paid a total over those 12 months of $17,044.68. So when I combine those, I get $284,279.22. Like that's pretty substantial over 20 years. And remember, you've put that into nothing that you own, right? Like you just paid out that money. So think about what you could have done with that money. Yes, it may have been a little bit painful financially to buy a house instead, but you would have this much. Do you remember the word I used? Equity, right? That's the value that you have in your property. But right now you have no equity.
You talk.
What's that?
I was just talking.
I see. Okay. Next part. So remember, the house, you could have bought a house at 195 and you had a down payment of 25,000. So you didn't use that down payment of 25,000. So what you want to do is invest it. So what would have happened to that investment over the 20 years? Okay, at least you'd be getting some money out of an investment you made. So this is growing at 5% a year, compounded annually, which means that to find this year, we take this times 1.05, or this times 0.05 plus this. But the quicker way is times 1.05, times 1.05, times 1.05. So if we go down to the 20th year, we're going to take the 19th year, and we're either going to go 60,000, 165.48 plus 5% of 60,000, 165.48 times 0.05. Or, like I said, the quicker way, take the previous year, and if it grows by 5%, that means that we multiply it by the entire amount and 5%. Well, an entire amount is 1, and 5% is 0.05. So again, if you can get used to doing it this way, it's a little bit more efficient. So when you do that, you're going to get $63,173.75. So the money that you put in, 25,000, has more than doubled. So at least you got something. So now maybe after 20 years, when you look at how much you paid in rent and you've got nothing out of it besides a place to live, okay, at least you now have this much to possibly say, okay, I'm going to go look to buy a house again. Now I've got a bigger down payment. Okay. Now I'm going to stop there.
That's it?
For today.